excellent match. I think what we would like. So first of all, thank you, Prasanna, Sudhir, and Jayant for joining this webinar. What we would like to discuss today is about reinventing back of house operations, which obviously know better than you guys to speak about, right? We'll go one by one and start with a brief introduction about yourself and what you've been doing. When did you launch your operations? And just for the audience to know a little bit about you. We'll start with you, Prasanna.
Sure. Okay. This is Eagle Owl, no? Directly about
Sorry?
Eagle Owl? Or is it about Eagle
No,
Owl
no,
or
no.
entire thing?
We should generally talk, not take specific products or brands. I don't want any
Okay.
brownie points here. So we'll just talk about technology in general for everyone to understand.
Okay. Right. So, as you know, Vinod knows me very well that I am the zero person when it comes to F&B. So I had no clue on what I was doing when I entered this industry. And the reason I entered this industry also to take some new challenge, right, which I didn't know. Earlier, I was into an IT industry. I used to code. I also work on marketing. This was my core business I was doing. Eventually, I got into F&B because it was sinking somewhere. I thought, okay, let me partner with this company and also help it grow up. One thing it was useful for me to from the previous business to this one is it was easier for me to transform the present issues which was going in food and beverage. Anybody asking to give me a report, they have 100 Excel sheets, right? 100 reports. नहीं आज नहीं होगा sir. Tomorrow is possible. I don't think so. It's possible. All these three reasons. But I thought we should all automate this. So how do we start plugging
Yeah.
in things like that?
Prasanna, before
Hmm.
going into those details, just a brief introduction of the brands that you run. When did you start? How long you've been in
Okay.
operations? That's
Okay.
it.
So right now I'm associated with two brands. One is Brew and Barbecue. One more is BLR Brewing Company. So Brew and Barbecue, I've been part of it for the last 4 years, and BLR Brewing Company, it's been including pandemic, it is now 8 months. Without pandemic, I think it's 3 months. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, so that's Prasanna for all of you. IT background, 4 5 years into the industry. Okay, great. Jayant, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So we run this small business called Mani's Dum Biryani. We have 14 outlets all in Bangalore. We're about 11 years old. So in all outlets are company owned and company operated.
Excellent. And you've been just too modest by saying it's a small brand, right?
So
Exactly.
we are a small brand. Yeah. We're still a small brand. We're a growing brand. Yeah.
Yeah. So, by the way, I would like to tell all the viewers that Jayant is co-author of a book called "Startup Your Restaurant," right, which was published in 2000,
In 2016. Yeah.
2016. Yeah. So he's not a small guy by any means. You should read that book. All right. Sudhir,
Okay.
good to have you here. Just a quick intro for the audience.
Sure. Hi, Sudhir Shastri. We have been in business for about 8 years now, and we run Chianti as well as a smaller brand called Ministry of Pizza. And I must acknowledge and say hello to Jayant here. We met many years ago,
Yeah. So good
and
to see you.
hi, good to see you. And he helped us a lot with some of the free material he had put up on his blog, and I really use that as a base to get started. Background IT and zero knowledge of F&B as of about 8 years ago, and that's my background.
Okay. All right, great. I think we have a right mix of people: 4 years, 8 years, and 11 years. Giant being the senior. So let's get started with you, Giant. When you started the restaurant, of course, you also would have had minimal experience of running operations when you, right? Uh, how are you managing the back end operations then, and when did you decide to change, and what all pain did you go through?
See, I think a couple of things. The first big pain when we had was when we scaled, when we had more than one outlet. So everything from purchase to recipe management, inventory management, all of that became an issue. So that is when early on, when we had four outlets, we decided to invest in what we call as a central support unit. So all the procurement, etc., was done centrally, and then we used to distribute to our outlets. And we were using Excel sheets till about 2-3 years back when we invested in a technology platform. And I think for the last 1 year, we've been using Eagle.
Okay, all right. So if you could just delve a little deeper, right? I mean, what I'm trying to tell the audience is like, at what stage did the pain come up that you decided that this is not going to scale? What was that moment for you?
Okay, so the moment is very simple. When our food costs were in the 60-65% range and our sales were lower, we just couldn't figure out why one outlet was at 35%, the other outlet was at 55%, and vice versa. So we realized that it's not because there was a problem with another outlet, it's because we just had no controls in place. And
Okay.
the easiest thing is to go blame the staff saying that you're doing a bad job. But then unless you equip them with the skills and tools, there is no way you're going to track cooks and tell them that you have to use 100 grams of chicken in this product, etc. So I think we had no tools available for them.
Got it. Thanks. So Sudhir, we'll move on to you. I think you've been in operation for about 8 years now. So what were you doing before? Let's say when you started, what were the things that you wanted to do but you couldn't do? And the same question like Jan, at what point did you start feeling the pain, if I may say so?
Okay, so like I said, we were complete novices coming into the industry for the first time, and for the first, I would say, approximately a year, we really had no clue what was going on. I mean, one month cost would be 50%. 1 month cost would be down to 35%, and then of course we started as usual. I mean, this is not really rocket science. Procurement processes and controls have been in place for many years. We just had to adapt them, understand them, and apply them to our particular context. So initially, it was all Excel sheets. I think it took us almost 2 years to actually have one person to centralize purchase. And then slowly we started realizing after about 4 years of operations that the tooling has to be improved to provide predictability. More than anything else, it is about predictability, especially as we grew. We were at one point, we had about 8 restaurants. Now we're down to about 5 because of COVID and other reasons. But the idea was that if we did not use tooling, we would not be able to scale in a predictable manner. We'd be doing the same things, reinventing, etc., etc. So we had to move on from Excel sheets, and hence the reason for investing in technology. Also, the other aspect I think technology allows you to do is to change the standard model, which is one cost controller per restaurant, which is what we had earlier, right? So once we have tooling in place, you can even cut down on human resource costs. So those were the reasons.
Excellent, very well put. So Prasanna, you just started off 4 years ago, and I mean, Bruin Barbecue was something that was doing phenomenally well. And at what point did you decide to switch technology? What were your considerations?
So as you told, I don't want to just keep it eagle out, but let me tell you the complete technology transform which I was trying to understand. Right. So when I asked the previous guys working in the industry, they don't have knowledge about software or how do we automate stuff. So I believe in such if you try to automate 10 man work into one automation, right? It's easier day by day. Let it be an automated report comes to your email box, right? Your life is easy. You don't have to follow up with anybody. So that's when I thought I'll try multiple POS, right? Who can give me an access in my phone where I can handle all the sales reports and everything, where I don't have to call my managers and check with them. So that took me like a year and a half to figure out which is the best POS for me and a good support. And I landed up with POSes. Then coming to the inventory part, I was not happy and I don't know how to manage also. So all I was believing is I had to go sit in the store physically because our volume was high. So we jumped the revenue within 1 or 2 years, like almost 3 to 4 times we scaled up in the same thing. But I had to go physically sit in the store to understand why there is so much purchase, why they're not able to control the purchase. And then I don't know what is costing, right? So costing out, I thought is okay, take the purchase, take the sales, minus it, that's your costing. That's how I was doing it. But there were a lot of leakages, like, one particular product bought at different price levels on a monthly basis. This month it is 100 rupees. Next month is 200 rupees. So how do we cut down all these things? That's when you came in, and Ajay from Windmills, we told, I have a brilliant guy who can do this for you. So then we met Vinod.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, I think we're the second or third person to join Vinod.
yeah, yeah. One of the earliest adopters. Okay, great.
Right.
Yeah. So, what essentially I'm coming to. So, let's look at how people start. As typically, people like you from an IT background, most of them these days, and generally what happens is people are more focused towards front of house technology in terms of point of sales, let's say CRM or advertising and stuff. Do you think largely restaurateurs have ignored the spot for too long, and how important do you think it's is critical for your success? We'll start with you, Prasanna.
See, it is very important. Why we are maybe I think till pandemic I think everybody has ignored the costing. Everyone has ignored the purchase because they think it's a very small part. It doesn't matter. Let it go. Even in terms of delivery also, I was ignoring a lot. Like, why do we do delivery sales? I'm happy with my dining. But they were like last 3 months, I was only looking at, okay, how do I, scale up my delivery sales? So just like delivery, the back end operation is very, very important. Like how we take care of the customer on table also, right? Because you're losing, even if it's 1% or 10%, you're losing the money end of the day. So there is no point of running your F&B without even looking at your back end operation.
Okay.
Right? With using technology, I feel
Jayant?
it's much easier and much faster. Right? You'll have some peace of mind, not to worry about your costing again and again or your purchase again and again.
Got it. Okay, Jayant, what is your take on this?
So it's a very simple thing. I think anybody who's been in business for a reasonable period of time will understand that sales actually doesn't matter. What matters is profitable sales. Unless you are VC funded like a Fastsource or a Zomato or a Swiggy, you have to do profitable sales. Otherwise, you're not going to survive. So the only way to do profitable sales is by getting things in order internally, whether it's your procurement, whether it's your staffing costs, whether it's your overheads, all of those. So that's when we started investing in technology, and we realized that unless you have control on these, we won't be able to survive because we don't have the backing of a large investor.
Got it. Okay. Sudhir, what's your view on this?
Well, I think Jayant put it very well in terms of profitable sales being the key, especially given the market conditions and the competition that is around. This industry is very tough, and if you don't have profitable sales, you're going to be closing up shop very soon. So investing in back of the house for me is critical. To provide predictability more than anything else. For me, I keep coming back to the same word, predictability. If I do 50 lakhs of sales, I must do X amount of profit, and where the money is going is key to track. Clearly, cost of goods sold is a fundamental component of that, right? So for me, investing in technology, also coming from a tech background, I had the faith in the technology to ensure that we invest in it. I think many investors in the food business probably don't have that perspective. Probably come in and say that, if I'm doing sales and I'm scaling up my sales, everything is fine, everything is good. But with the the laws of economics, in terms of reducing gains, it's going to catch up with you sooner or later. So for me, it's critical, absolutely critical to invest in back of the house.
So there, I have a couple of add-on questions for you. We'll start with you. So one thing we want to really understand is, why do you think this is largely ignored by restaurateurs so far? I mean, you guys have picked up over the course of running your operations, right?
Yes.
At some point, you felt you have to do it, but do you think, like, for example, I know Prasanna started off, or BL Library started off doing costing much before they launched the operations. Would you recommend your fellow restaurants in the network to start with this also in parallel and not kind of treat it as a stepchild?
Absolutely. In fact, if that is what Prasanna started with, that's the absolute right model to go after. I mean, if you have a very clear view on what your product offerings are and what it costs to produce that, then you're in business from the get-go, right? Your keyword being profitable sales is going to happen right from the beginning. So highly recommended. Don't repeat mistakes of the past that we have all gone through. Please invest in ensuring that you understand menu costing very well. Is
Okay.
my advice.
Yeah, we'll come to menu cost in a little bit and get into deeper aspects which you guys are well versed with. Jayant, a basic question for new restaurateurs or even existing. Why do you think people have largely ignored it?
See, I think
Is it because it's not sexy or is it tough to do?
yeah, one is I think it's very, very difficult to track because if you have a track, then the inputs have to be on an ongoing basis. It's not something you can sit at the end of the month and say that what happened, right? So I think the systems which exist today require an accountant or a cost controller to enter the inputs. So one of the reasons we delayed implementing a system was we have 14 outlets, so our managers have to enter it, and all our managers are not even school educated folks. So we wanted a system as simple as WhatsApp for them to use. So that's one of the reasons we actually delayed the rollout of a backend technology platform, because without the inputs, there's no point having a fancy report if the inputs are incorrect.
Got it.
So also, the second reason a lot of new restaurateurs don't invest in this is the guy who controls the cash is involved in all the purchase initially, at least. So they feel that they can control things because they are involved in every decision. So we did it the same way. Any purchase above a certain amount, either me or money had to be involved in the beginning. So it is easier for us to track and keep control. But what we don't realize is 150,000 rupees is not as bad as 10,000 rupees in the 30 days. That's actually 3 lakhs. So you realize it later.
Yeah. As they say, top line is vanity, bottom line matters. So Prasanna will come to you. Yeah, again, if you can just touch upon from your own experience of why restaurateurs typically ignore. Is it like lack of judgment, or is it just they're not being unaware of that these things have to be done? Would you say that, or what's your opinion on that?
See, I think you know very well that right today's date, every brewery or restaurant is set up by a consultant. You agree on this, right?
Yeah.
Because not everyone comes from F&B background. The consultant ignores this costing part completely, I feel, from my perspective, right? So consultant should put this across to an owner saying that invest the money on your technology, because that is what going to tell you what is the business getting you back, right? So this is something ignored from the consultant also. Another thing is, as Jain told, it's very clear thing is, it is not something that we worry about. Okay, because we have a cash in hand, so we will
Prasanna,
be able to manage.
I think we have a lot of noise from your back end. If you can just mute it for a while, or you can ask them to stop for a while, it would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Prasanna. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. So I was saying, yes. So we ignore because we think, okay, we control the cash, we write the checks, we make the transfers, so we can easily understand. But when I go sit with my accountant also, to consolidate the bills and verify, it takes at least 1 hour a day, right, on a weekly basis. But when I come to the store and look at so many bills, I'm really confused, and I have to ask him like why there is 5 rupees more, why there is 10 rupees more. So I feel these all can be fixed if you have some system in place and you update everything in the system, right? Just one simple tool that you are given. Price of onion increased over 1 week of time, from where to where? Is it from the same vendor or is it from the different places? So these are something will give a peace of mind to sit and relax and look at other things. So it is definitely you have to invest if you want to run a good, profitable restaurant.
all right. Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next part with Sudhir Shastri touched upon. We'll get into menu pricing and menu engineering. So Sudhir, we'll start with you. When you started a restaurant, you would have decided that, okay, I'm making these garlic breads or aiolis or pastas, and it's going to cost me so much. Hence, I'm going to account for my OPEX expense. I'm going to sell it at this particular price. Did you really do that initially, or were you just arbitrarily pricing it based on market trends or your competition? What was the thought process behind that?
So initially, it was purely competitive landscape based, right? And we said we have to sell it not greater than this price, and hence we fix the price. But coming and this has a relation to the point that you were raising earlier about implementing cost controls. I think it takes time for people to understand all the nuances, right? So it's not as simple as saying, what am I buying? and what am I buying it for? Because that changes. For example, with our operations, we have approximately 142 different items that we buy. Now, the prices of these keep changing, right? Prasanna touched upon that. And if you don't have some tooling that helps you keep track of that, you're going to very soon lose track, right? That's one part of it. The second thing is, as the vendor changed, has all of this, how has this impacted your costs? If you don't have a view of that and you don't have the technology to do that, you're not going to get your predictable outcomes. So menu engineering, very important. At this point in time, I still think we are not as sophisticated as we would like to be. I think we're probably about 60 to 70% there. A truly sophisticated system would allow us to dynamically change things and put the things in, but then the market demands are different. So, I don't know if that answers your question. I've gone all over the place. Vinod, get me back on track if you like.
No, that's pretty much fun. I was just touching upon the aspect that these are largely ignored by people from my own experience at what I've seen, and me and Jayant and Prasanna have also had a lot of chat around that. So, Sudhir, to add on to another question before I move to Prasanna and Jayant is, I think even a couple of years ago, your COGS was pretty much well under control from what I knew. And I remember having a chat with you. I was like, fine, you already had a great number. I don't think I can help you further. And you were like, no, I still want it. And you had a reason. You said, how the hell do I know if my actual versus expected is close, or if my expected is actually what I'm thinking it is, right? So could you just elaborate on that for the audience to tell them, what do you mean by expected COGS versus actual?
So for us, the critical thing was, how do we scale? I mean, our thinking about 2 years back was, we can scale this business quite a bit more. And how do we do that? And back of the house was exactly the area that I wanted to invest in, because of all the things that you mentioned, predictable costs, not just from the whole operation, but from each individual outlet. And what do I need to do? And will I get the business insight from the data to allow me to make those decisions? For example, do I know that, among my menu items, if cheese is an important aspect and an important part of our cuisine, what is the real cost of that going into the menu, right? And is that consistent across the units? So you can pick up different parts based on the nuances that you see across the restaurants to ensure consistency. Consistency of delivery is one part of it. Consistency of the customer experience is one part of it. But again, I come back to consistency in the bottom line. If I don't have that, we can't scale. We just can't scale.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, Jayant, just walk us through your menu engineering principles. How often do you do it? How you are managing so far?
So, I am a big believer in a single product menu. So, we have only one product. We don't do anything else, which means that we don't do roti, curries, and other stuff. I think it just makes it more complicated to scale. Even in our menu, what we've learned over the last several years is, I'll make the most profits if I sell kushka, not if I sell biryani, because meat is expensive. The other thing is, I actually, our costing on our mutton biryani is about 55-60%. But as a biryani shop, I can't not have mutton biryani. But I don't want to discount those. I want to use it on Facebook, but not in our restaurant. In restaurant, we want people to order kushka, the chicken biryanis. That's how we make our money. So that's what we realized. Another thing is, paneer biryani is as expensive as chicken biryani for us. So which means that we ended up pricing it similar to a chicken biryani. So we've done a lot of small tweaks like this. So the key we realize is to confuse the customer as though they have a lot of choice of options with our combos, etc. But it's really like pizzas. You have one bread with some toppings on it. So biryani is very similar. You have rice with a couple of things on top of it. That's it. So I'll be really happy if all our sales are only kushka. I think the bottom line will be great.
Okay, that's interesting. Prasanna, are you there? Okay, we'll just wait a bit and then, So, Prasanna, I think you went pretty deep into menu engineering, probably about 2.5 years after running your business, right? And you did a lot of changes from what I could see in your system. So, just walk us through your thought process on how you leveraged menu engineering to your profitability.
I think Vinod has given me a lot of free lectures in terms of how to manage a store. I think I was a free lectures over the beer. Right. So I think the first point you said was how do you understand it actual versus expected, right? So this is when I had big time arguments with my chef. Like he gives me a dishes and this is what the costing price. And I asked him how. He's like out of my experience I've done this. Right. Then I see an expected costing when we pay the vendor. Right. Then when I do a calculation, it is not the actual. Right. That is where it lands up to expected. How? Because instead of 100 grams chicken in one particular dish, he's using 150 grams or 120 grams. Even the 20, 30 grams also is, I'm losing money there. So these are certain things, I could understand from the technology. How do we cut down and get to the actuals and expected same?
Right. So I think last year, I think June, July, August, I remember that you got very serious about this in terms of costing, right? You were at like, I think 41, 42%. And then in a matter of 2-3 months, you brought it down to 30.8. What exactly did you do? And how did you make it happen? Because I know it's very tough to convince the chef that he has to track it, right? I'm sure everybody faces the same problem because you're questioning them with data. How did you do it? You actually achieved those numbers. So if you can tell the audience how you did it, it will be helpful for others.
So it exactly took me like 3 months, to convince my chef, like, please do it. And convince my store guy also, please do it. This is for your benefits and my benefits. But ultimately they did not learn. So I had to sit myself, work on the recipes along with them, and I started updating it myself. So then eventually they said, okay, Prasanna is doing, I should also do it. Right? So then we came to first level of cutting down 2%, then 5%, then eventually cut down 10%. Then I called Vinod and said, man, it's working out.
Yeah. So I think in Prasanna's case, I think the numbers were pretty huge on a 50-55 lakh sale of food. Cutting down 10% in a couple of months was it's really huge. And I hope he continues to do the same thing. Yeah. Okay. So Sudhir, coming to you, I know it. Let's come to choosing the partner and also in implementation. Right, these are two big challenges every restaurateur face, and this is something we also see when we go and talk to people. Okay, I like it, but I'm not sure if my staff will actually use it. And I know it's a challenge considering the type of people we employ. Not trying to demean anyone. So Sudhir, how did you decide on, let's say, any solution, whatever that you wanted to choose, and how did you convince your team that this had to be done, even if it was pissing them off?
Okay, so just to touch upon a couple of things. One part is using high tech, so to speak, right, to control your costs. The other part, I think, that is largely ignored, and I'm going off track a little bit, but I'll tell you the importance of it. I think that there's a lot to learn from the large fast food chains, and which we don't actually implement. Simple, very simple things like using standard measures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the chef's eye or the cook's feel, just use a standard measure. It's so damn easy. Nobody gets it. I mean, that's what a lot of these fast food chains use, right? Portioning. I think first invest in that, make sure that that's taken care of. And after that, the technology. So coming back to your point about how we convinced, I think for me, it was as simple as saying, you don't have to update Excel sheets every day. You have a tool that gives you a template. You just upload information, and it's much easier. It cuts down on time, and you have enough time to pay attention to the important things. That's what I told my purchase guy, and it actually didn't take him too long to get convinced. And for me, I would say that rather than getting people in the kitchen to meddle with technology, so to speak, and needing to update things other than maybe the chef, it's easier if somebody who does it as a full-time job takes care of this. That would be my. So tooling is one part of it, the resources is another part of it, and the training is the third part of it.
Got it. So Jayant will just take a little bit of tangential question to what Sudhir was saying. Did you ever have a controller in your entire setup? Did that really help? And how did you convince your team to start using technology, or how did you go about that?
So we hired a finance guy when we had 10 outlets, just for context. Forget controller. Okay. So, one of the things we have learned over years is whenever we implement a new solution, we actually don't do trials. What we do is we actually pay for a license for a couple of months, ask our folks to use it, then look at the results and then make a decision whether to renew the license or not. So the cloud-based model really helped us because we didn't have to invest in a system with a lot of capex. So that's what we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years. And then what we've done is we've taken a very Google kind of an approach. So let's say you're using Google Maps to go to a location, then Google tells you that go eat at this restaurant, right? So rather than look at what reports we as management need, we have looked at what the employees need to do their job easier. So you're procuring stuff from vendors, so you're making calls, there are quantity issues, etc. Instead of that, you enter in a system that goes in an SMS to the vendor, and then he fills out what he's sending and sends it back to it. So this makes the purchasing guy's job easier. And we get all the reports in the backend. So that's the approach we have taken, and it seems to have worked reasonably well for us. Similarly, with
you
the
didn't,
dispatch between outlets, yeah.
yeah, and you didn't face much of a resistance in terms of adoption, or was it like, I'm just asking whether it needs to be a top-down approach, or do you need to get all of your team to align with you to use it? Like, what kind of approach do you take?
Yeah, I don't think the top-down approach will work at all because the minute you push it down their throats, they're going to find the easiest way to do the minimal required stuff. So we have taken a very bottom-up approach for most of these things. For example, even with Eagle Owl, I don't decide whether we want to continue Eagle Owl or not. It's my finance guy and procurement guy who gives me feedback. I think you've seen that also. If they say no, we'll pull the plug on a software.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, Prasanna. So what was your take on controllers, and did you ever have a controller? Do you think it really helps a restaurant?
Actually, I didn't understand the F&B controller profile first thing, right? And I called you, I need to hire one person as an F&B controller. I only have store manager, and I have store executive and two more guys who's helping them. So I called Vinod. I told you interview this guy, and I understood actually he doesn't even know what he's supposed to do as a controller, right? That's when I started implementing in a different way. I told my chef, right now my costing is 35%. So on your next appraisal or next year review, I'll make sure I'll enhance your payroll based on my costing, right? I will give you a tool. I will give you the resources. Make sure you use it and get it to me for 5%, right? I'll make sure your review is better than what you got from the previous. So he took interest to, okay, start working on the recipes.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And I simplified the store guys work also, saying that, boss, I don't need F&B controller, but I have an F&B controlled software. Like it can control kitchen and store also. Just do the entries. Don't do anything else.
Yeah. So one of the things I would like to ask, start from Sudhir, is that a lot of people in the industry that I've observed typically have a controller or some finance person or an equivalent who takes a bunch of data either from a system or an Excel sheet and then gives you the costing for the month 3-4 days after that month, right? Like 4 days into the next month. That's when he gives you. Isn't that a little too late? What do you feel like? Would you not like to track things dynamically at least on a weekly basis too? Because by the time the data's done, the damage is also done, the money is already lost, right? What's your, like, how often do you track your key back of house KPIs and metrics?
So we use a simple 80-20 rule here. So what we do is the 20% of the ingredients that contribute to 80% of our cost are tracked daily.
Okay.
And a weekly cost report is given to me so that there are no surprises at the end of the month. So based on
Sudhir, we lost you. Are you there?
that, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. Breaking up a bit. Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
You got? Can you hear me now?
Not very clear, Sudhir. I think it's kind of breaking up a lot. Yeah.
Okay, I really don't know what to do about. Hold on.
Yeah, much better.
Is that better? Okay. So I was saying, I don't know where you lost me, but essentially, high cost items track daily, overall cost track weekly, and put everything together at the end of the month and see where your costs are, and determine what are the levers you have to bring down the costs going forward. So just as a simple example, clearly over the last 4 months or so, our costs have been much higher because we have gone much more into delivery, and hence the commissions have eaten up into our profits. But we're slowly getting that back on track as diners start coming back in. But you will get only what you inspect is all that will be tracked, right? So you have to inspect, I think, at least on a weekly basis to answer your question directly.
Got it. Prasanna, what are your key KPIs in terms of tracking your back-end operations or efficiency? How often do you do it?
Maybe weekly once, the present scenario. But before the technology, yes, it was on daily basis.
Daily basis. Okay.
Yeah, now it
So now
has
you
got to
feel
be weekly basis.
got it. So you're far more comfortable that things are rather better than how it was. Is that the reason, or is it because you have a peace
Yeah,
of
it's
mind that
easier
things
to
are
track. Easier to track, and there's a peace of mind to sit and relax again. There is no leakage.
Got it.
One simple example was the highest product that we purchased was chicken leg boneless,
Right.
because we use it in all of our products. So the variance was close to 250 kilos a month, 350 kilos a month. How? Because wastage, people throw.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll wait a bit.
So I think those are something now. I'm able to say I'm having peace of mind, not worry on that.
Got it. And Jayant, how often are you tracking your key metrics in the back end?
See, we do this a little bit differently because we have 14 small outlets, unlike, let's say, Prasanna has 2 large outlets. So what we've done is the management team, whenever we visit an outlet, there are a couple of things we have to do. One is, let's say, over the last couple of days, this has been the sales. So we have a formula where we say that if these have been the sales, this is the amount of chicken that should have been consumed, this is the amount of rice that should have been consumed. Then we look at how much they've ordered from our central stores, and we look at the variance in that. And that model has worked really well for us. So now with Eagle Owl, we're able to get that data pretty quickly. We know exactly how much the outlets have ordered. We know based on the sales, the actual cost sales. This is the consumption of chicken boneless or chicken with leg or mutton. So that's the only tracking that we do. So it's not on a daily basis. I would say whenever anybody from the management team goes to an outlet, they go and review it with the managers there.
Okay.
So I would say it's probably more than a couple of times a week.
Okay, that's
we
that's
also
a pretty
use Sudhir's method of the 80-20. So we only look at rice, chicken, mutton, eggs, containers. So containers, though it's not food, it's part of our COGS.
Got it. So I think Prasanna touched upon variance. So did you. So we'll go back to Sudhir and ask him. So your expected was actual was not too different if I recall, even after you implemented back of house software. So, but I remember that you used to track it every Tuesday as part of your ops meeting. So what exactly do you ask your team? What kind of reports you look at for these 80-20 items that you spoke about, and what were the action items that you took to keep it under control, if I would say?
Yeah, like I said earlier, we used some simple tooling initially, simple things in terms of consistency of measures. Then we started portioning, a good year after we started actually. So, for example, our standard pasta measure is 140 grams, right? So that was never actually portioned out earlier. It was just eyeballed. So we started doing that and brought in a lot of consistency. Today, what I do is purely look at variance. For me, it is consistency across the outlets, and my incentive scheme is also based on how well the unit chef is able to manage his costs. So carrot and stick everywhere. I think variance, like I said, every week it's tracked, along with customer experience and the front of the house stuff. But very very key to us is that consistency, and the team has that well under control, I would say now.
Got it. So, Prasanna, will move on to you and go to the next topic. As we know, in a restaurant industry, the sales kind of becomes a little flat over a period of time. I know we grow pretty good from 0 to 2 years, and then it's rather flat over a period of time, right? And our operational cost keeps increasing. So, given this kind of a tough scenario, how do you plan to maintain your desired margin or EBITDA?
One thing that was, I think, menu engineering, which helped me out. So we started, designing the menu every 3 months. Every 3 months, we try to change the dishes that not selling up. Right? We cut down the store inventory that we have to keep on it. That helped me in one way. The other one is also to upsell, right? Things which are lying in the myself, right? So I didn't know there are some sauces which was kept in the store for like almost 6 months, and I have only 3 more months validity, right? If I don't utilize, it's going to be a wastage.
Mhm.
I think that helped me to balance the sale over there. Another
Got
thing
it.
was also to understand the wastages, right? So the mise place we prepare 3 days once or weekly once and stuff like that, right? I was not getting a wastage report on a easy way. So now I can get a detailed wastage report saying at which department, what dish, how much they threw. Is it spoiled or is it thrown or something else? These are something could help me out.
Got it. Got it. So, Jayant, moving on to you, do you foresee yourself not just with the menu engineering, like increasing the price of your dishes to offset your operational cost increase? How do you plan to maintain your margin?
Yeah, I think it's like a seesaw. It's a balance between at what price point will the customer be willing to buy
Mm-hmm.
compared to what is available in the market. So it's a very delicate balance you have to achieve. The other thing we also notice is that when your sales volume go up, your costs actually come down. It's not for example, let's say you do 2 lakhs of sales and your food cost is 30%. When you do 5 lakhs, the food cost is actually 25-26%. So we've also realized that the volumes really help drive food costs lower. We are still trying to figure the math behind it, but yeah.
Yeah, the math hasn't changed. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there, how do you strike a balance, like Prasanna or Jayant was saying? Like, at what point of time do you think that okay, now I can't continue to sell at this price? There has to be an increase.
So we review pricing every 3 months, but actual changes to menu price we do only once a year. So we try to use different levers. Jayant touched upon it when he said about increasing sales, increasing and decreasing the costs. But for us, it's a slightly more nuanced thing in the sense that because it because we have a fairly wide product mix, right? Or even the numbers. I mean, the menu is right now about 60 items. So what we have found is the sales mix is very important, right? So the better that we sell our desserts, the better that we sell our mocktails, the more that we sell of our pastas, our profitability is greater. So we use different approach. Front of the house is incented to make those sales happen, and we look at those percentages very carefully. So
Got it.
it's a two-way thing in the sense that one part is controlling costs using technology and tooling. The second part is incenting front of the house to sell more of the profitable items.
Got it. Upselling the more profitable items. Yeah. So, Jayant, I think you have 15 outlets right now in Bangalore, and you're looking to expand to more outlets. At what stage did it give you confidence that yes, now my operations are settled, my team is settled, now I can expand it? What are the key elements that you think any restaurateur should have before thinking of scale?
So I think the first thing we at least look at is, which may be different from what the industry does, is do we have the staff to run the new outlet that we open, whether it's a cloud kitchen or a restaurant? For us, that is very, very critical. There are two key staff we have in each outlet: the manager and the cook, or what we call as a kitchen in charge. So unless I have these two, I will not expand. The second one is we're also very conservative in terms of the rentals we pay, etc. So luckily, we don't have an investor which says that I have to open 10 outlets in a year. If I find a place that suits us at the budget we want, we will open it. Otherwise, we won't do it. And if we don't have the staff, we won't do it. So we have some luxuries that way. So systems, etc., is secondary for us. We have not even looked at. Now, good thing is we at least have a centralized POS. At some point of time, we were running 4 different POSs in different outlets. So now we have one POS, one backend, etc. So I think we are in slightly better shape.
Okay, gives you more confidence to open up more.
Correct. Plus, we have 2 large back-end facilities we've invested in. So our procurement happens centrally. So 98% of our purchases happen in our central store. Plus, we also have a butchery where all the meats get cut. One other thing which we mentioned, the portion size. So we don't leave that to the outlets. All our chicken pieces get cut, marinated in our butchery, which means that if a chicken piece is supposed to be 60 grams, it is going to be 60 grams. Outlets can't really do anything about it.
Got it.
So we've
Got it. So
invested in
you
those
maintain
two.
consistency.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So there, so I think you were looking at scaling, and you're still scaling. And what point of time did it give you confidence that now I can scale comfortably and the operations would run smoothly? It's like a copy paste model, pretty much how the big chains in US have done, whether it's McDonald's or KFC. At what point of time do you like? What are the things that you require to help you to scale to that level?
Okay, so I think we have the formula down pat now. The only issues that we face now are getting the right locations at the right price, right? So that's always a challenge. There's still a wide variation in the rents that we pay across the outlets. However, we still are seeing that the higher rent places are bringing in more revenue also. So we're not messed up in that sense. But yeah, I think front of the house, back of the house, staffing very key. But yes, today we do have the confidence of saying that we have a copy paste model in place. We know what a Chianti looks like. We know what the staffing should be like. We know what the kitchen should look like. We know the cost of setting up a kitchen, setting up the interiors. So fairly well versed with setting up units now, and we have those controls in place.
Excellent. That's good to hear. You're going to be the next McDonald's chain then. Yeah, I mean, it's good to see you being confident that I have a copy paste model, right? Not many people actually have it. It's actually good to be in that spot. Yeah, Prasanna, tell us about your scaling plans and what would give you comfort that now I can sit at home and still the operations would run fine.
I think we are not at a scaling stage right now because our operations is not something small. Like, it's huge, right? To manage 120 people in an outlet, it's a nightmare, right? So we are still having the challenges of how do we automate these things, right? So those are something still I'm not able to figure out when it comes to a larger scale. But I think this pandemic has taught us to expand cloud kitchens, right? So I am looking at to expand food only brand very soon.
Got it. Okay, we just have 8 more minutes. So what we'll do is we'll do a roundup on the topics that we touched, and we'll start with you, Jayant. So I think if you can give a closing note on how technology has helped you, and what is your advice to the upcoming restaurateurs or people who are running, what would that be the key advice that you want to give them?
The key advice is running a restaurant is probably one of the toughest things you can do in your life. So any tools that can really help you save those 1-2%, I think it's worth looking at least. That would be my primary advice. And like you talked about the US chains, right? I've done whatever analysis I do. The only difference I see in the profitability is the food cost there is consistently 25%. In India, most chains are at 35-40%. And that's the 10% margins that they have. So in India, you don't have that luxury. So you have to eat the 1-2-3% from somewhere else. You have to stretch it out from somewhere else. So tools like Eagle Owl, a good POS, etc. If it helps you do that, I think it's worth investing in.
Okay, great. Sudhir, your take on this? Key points.
So, I mean, I just come back to my industry training and things that I learned when I was working in the IT industry. I think everything is around people, process, and tools, right? So the tooling is critical, the people are critical, the process is critical. Now, if aspiring restaurateurs understand this right from the beginning, and don't try to find their own way, so to speak. I mean, you have to find your own ways, individual, but at the same time, there's so much that you can learn by just investing. I would say spend 70% of your time in design and then implement, and you will reap the benefits for a very long time going ahead.
Okay, thank you. Prasanna, what's your advice and your view on this?
I think, as Mr. Sudhir rightly said, from the initial stages, we should get adapted to this, right? Put it in a simple format, we should be able to track which customer came, when he came, what staff ate and what you are eating, right? It should be tracked, right? It can be tracked only through technology, is what I feel, right? It's definitely a worthwhile to invest on technology before even you start and have a right plan to it.
All right. All right. I really appreciate all of you guys participating and sharing your knowledge. Hope you guys, hope all the viewers enjoy watching the session too. So we have three very experienced restaurateurs based in Bangalore. Jayant, who runs Manish Dum Biryani. Sudhir, who runs Chianti chain of restaurants, Italian chain. And Prasanna, who's the brewery guy, BLR Brewing and Brew and Barbecue. Thanks to all of you. I think let us all catch up over a mug of beer sometime. And
Surely.
we wish you all the best.
And I would like to host you all.
Thanks.
That would be great. Thank
Over
you.
to you, George.
Thank you so much, Vinod and Sudhir, Jayant, and Prasanna. I think the session was very, very informative, and I'm pretty sure that the audience would get a completely different perspective because, in all honesty, the conversation has been largely about, COVID and marketing and branding and very front of office. And, we really haven't had a topic that's looking at what happens in the back, behind the scenes kind of thing. And that, I guess, like everyone rightly said, completely turns into the profitability side of things, and in other words, helps restaurants and everything survive. I feel the session was amazing. I'm pretty sure the audience is going to find that very, very informative. Thank you very much for taking the time to be part of this.
Thank you all. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.